What's up everyone, I'm Twisted. 2023 is almost over, so what better time than now to speculate on what we might see in 2024. Keep in mind that my predictions have been very wrong in the past, so don't get your hopes too high with anything I mention here. The next season of League of Legends is starting with major changes to the game themed around the Void, from the VGU of Baron to the new monsters and new versions of Red and Blue. These look similar to the Void creatures seen in LOR, mostly in Kai'Sa's cards, and some people have already speculated that they could be on the side of Bel'Veth. Bel'Veth was first teased in late 2021 in a Malzahar story and released in 2022 alongside a story where she tasked Kai'Sa with defeating the Watchers. It was around this time that the theories for the Void event started. We knew a Void champion was coming and we had a bunch of stories mentioning the Void. What we ended up getting was, as expected, the release of Bel'Veth in League of Legends. But this wasn't the only Void related content that we got, as Kai'Sa was released in Legends of Runeterra and Kassadin was released in Wild Rift. Kai'Sa's cards are tied to her story with Bel'Veth, and Kassadin got a brand new design and splash art, which features Bel'Veth's Remora. The various teams at Riot usually work on a bunch of different yet connected projects around the same time. So, despite Riot confirming that there won't be a Void event this year, we might still get more Void related content. The next two League champions don't seem to be related to the Void, but there are still a lot of Void champions not in Legends of Runeterra or Wild Rift. This year, Legends of Runeterra even got the Dune Swaller card, which could be teasing an upcoming Void champion. 2023 also saw the release of Song of Nunu, which had Lissandra as the main antagonist, so of course there were references to the Watchers throughout the game. In the end, it's revealed that Nunu has the Heart of the Blue, a power so strong it could be used to fight the Watchers. When the duo met Volibear, he said this:
"We will meet again, Cub. One day, on the eve of battle. And if you haven't found what you are searching for by then, I'll kill you both myself."
In Sejuani's story from 2021, a character said the following to Sejuani: "A time is coming when the sons and daughters of the Freljord must stand together or you will all die one by one." The last time this happened was during the War of the Three Sisters against the Watchers, so I believe both Volibear and this character are referring to the return of the Watchers. We know Kai'Sa is likely on her way to face them, but the Champion Insights post for Bel'Veth mentions how Kassadin might be joining her as well. The latest expansions of LOR showed Nilah traveling through Runeterra, so Kassadin traveling from Shurima to the Freljord could also work, and Nilah is the perfect segue for this next section. Riot has sprinkled content for demon enjoyers here and there for the past years. Tibbers was confirmed to be a demon, Nilah was released in League and LOR, Evelynn was also released in LOR, and there are demon references in the Forge games and even in one of the upcoming items. The Mage Seeker game had a note referencing Nefiri before she was released, and the Rune King had a teaser for Gwen, but unfortunately the game was delayed and Gwen was released before it. So, when the community saw this note in the Convergence game referencing a new primordial demon, everyone assumed it was a teaser for a new champion. With the release of Hui, however, we got a confirmation that this wasn't the case. This means this note could be referring to something else that is yet to be revealed. A lot of these notes also make references to characters or storylines seen in Legends of Runeterra. So perhaps this is teasing a new in-game follower, maybe part of Fiddlesticks cards? When Nilah came out in League of Legends, she had interactions with a bunch of champions, including both Volibear and Mordekaiser, and the only antagonist with whom she had an interaction in-game that's yet to show up in LOR is Fiddlesticks. However, Riot Runeclaw said this:
I've also made a bunch of flex cards, worked on Fate's Voyage, was a member of that design team, and I'm helping design the first release of 2024.
So it's possible that the first expansion of 2024 will not continue Nilah's journey. Still, Fiddlesticks was released in Wild Rift this year, and there's a big list of champions that were released in Wild Rift and then in Legends of Runeterra, or vice versa, less than a year apart. So, even without Nilah, we might still see Fiddlesticks in LOR. Also, this looks like Fiddlesticks' old queue, which is funny. In June of 2021, the card Fabled Poro featured Ornn in the background. Later in December, a ward themed after him was released in the League PvE, and in January of 2022 we got the Call cinematic featuring Ornn himself. Later he would also show up in Legends of Runeterra, and in the same year he almost showed up in Song of Nunu, but unfortunately the game was delayed to 2023. Before we got to see him in the game, however, he was released in Wild Rift. A similar story also happened with Aatrox. In 2022 he was released in Legends of Runeterra during the Darkin Saga expansions. He was released in Wild Rift in the Darkin Unleashed event, and there was even a ward team themed after him in League of Legends. In 2023, there was no season cinematic for League of Legends. However, Riot Meddler has confirmed that Aatrox was supposed to make an appearance, which explains the word. It's possible that this cinematic was going to feature the events of the Arcane saga in some way. All three games were getting Arcane content, including League of Legends with Naafiri and a voice update for Varus. Riot Meddler mentioned how we might see elements from this scrapped cinematic return in 2024, and since Riot released concept art of Aatrox for the next cinematic, I think this confirms it. Besides Aatrox, we don't really know what other champions were going to show up in the cinematic of 2023. In the World Ceremony that came out in the same year as the Call cinematic, the champions seen were mostly tied to the songs featured in the event. In 2023, however, two champions got the spotlight, Leona and Mordekaiser. These champions have no connection to each other in the lore, they don't even play in the same lanes in League, and they aren't super relevant in esports, so why were they chosen? Leona was already in the Call, so I don't know if she's showing up again, but Mordekaiser has a good chance of being in the next cinematic. Again, it's possible that the cinematic of 2023 was going to be tied to the Arcane saga. If that's true, then the cinematic being tied to Fate's Voyage would make sense. Regardless, Mordekaiser was released in LOR in the same year he showed up in the League ceremony, so I wouldn't be surprised to see more of him next year, be it in the season cinematic or in Wild Rift. Besides Leona and Mordekaiser, we also saw Aatrox, Renekton, Ahri, and Kayle in teasers for Worlds as well as merch. We know Aatrox was meant to show up in the 2023 cinematic, so it's possible that any of the other champions were too, especially Kayle if the cinematic had a section based on the Arcane saga. If you are enjoying this video, consider subscribing. Thank you. Moving on to Riot Forge games, we know Battletale is coming in 2024 and that Riot is working on a Shurima game. It's always hard to tie Forge games with content released in Riot's live service games because the development of a full game is different from a champion in League or LOR. Morgana was in the Mage Seeker game and later in the same year she came out in Legends of Runeterra. Does this mean her voice was recorded for both games around the same time? Maybe, but probably not. And the story of her cards is completely unrelated to the story of the game and might even contradict it depending on the timeline. With this being said, the only champion confirmed to be in Battletale missing from LOR is Corki, and the only missing from Wild Rift is Rumble, so maybe they are coming out next year. In 2024, we'll also see the return of Arcane. Last time both Wild Rift and LOR saw the release of Caitlyn and Jace, and League gave Caitlyn a much needed ASU. All three games also got skins themed around the show. I'm expecting something similar in 2024. From the current cast, Warwick and Singed are still missing in LOR, and Victor is still missing in Wild Rift, so tying their release in those games with the show would make sense. Obviously, the second season of Arcane could also introduce more Piltover or Zaunite champions who aren't in either game yet. We also got a confirmation that more lore skins are coming, so more Arcane skins seem pretty likely, though we know some lore skins are coming out before Arcane, so we should expect a Riot Forge game or any other piece of media related to the lore to be released before the show. Or perhaps these lore skins could be tied to the Champions 2.0 from Legends of Runeterra. That would be really cool. Now, let's talk about champions. We know Lee Sin and Teemo are getting an ASU in League and that LOR is introducing new versions of old champions. The illustration for the New Year's event in Wild Rift teased that Talon, Syndra and Kindred are coming to the game. Recently, when a splash is updated for League, that champion is released in Wild Rift shortly after, sometimes with a minor redesign. This happened with Kassadin, Hecarim and most recently Sivir, and Syndra is just around the corner. I wouldn't be surprised if she also joined LOR next year or the year after. I also wouldn't be surprised to see Talon get a new design in Wild Rift and join LOR as well, maybe alongside Katarina 2.0, Cassiopeia or even Briar. As I mentioned, the teams at Riot usually work on connected projects around the same time. Speaking of which, this year was big for Ixtal, with Nidalee's voice update and Milieu being released in League, followed by Nidalee and Nico in LOR and Zyra in Wild Rift. And next year, we can expect Skarner's VGU. Riot is in the process of retconning the Bracken to being from Ixtal, as well as the origin of Hextech to be in line with Arcane. They've confirmed that Camille's lore is being updated. Since there's already a narrative between Ixtal and Piltover, I think we might see Camille and Skarner join LOR next year, or the latter joining Wild Rift. LOR also introduced elemental spells and skills this year, so maybe we'll see Qiyana and Zyra join the game. Qiyana could also join Wild Rift really soon, based on all this work that Riot has done for Ixtal. Most of the new League champions can be tied to other projects. This makes me wonder about League's upcoming champions. It's a bit too early to talk about a Freljordan, Rabbit Vestaya's solo laner, so I'll skip her for now. The other upcoming league champion is an adorable creature marksman. The design of the egg, as well as the mention of fire breathing techniques in October's champion roadmap, hints at this champion being a dragon. The post also mentions how they are an heir of royalty and how there's something else protecting them. Well, Legends of Runeterra just saw the release of the Elder Dragon and a ton of dragon followers. The flavor of Elder Dragon's cards describes them as a king of all winged beasts, and their title is the Dragon Sire. So perhaps this is the being keeping the creature marksman safe. Even if these two have no connections at all, it would make sense for the teams to work on both dragon champions around the same time. The next year is the year of the dragon, so maybe the marksman will show up at the start of the year. The latest LOR expansion had a card featuring Silas, so it might see him finally joining the game next year, maybe alongside Lux 2.0. This expansion also brought the first non-Bandle City multi-region champions. This makes predicting new champions even harder, as expecting at least one champion per region in a year no longer makes sense. With this being said, there are a lot of champions that could be released as multi-region champions. Another idea introduced were curses. Any champion that's known for their debuffs or crown control in League could utilize this mechanic in LOR. Some of LOR's regions are running out of champions. Graves is the only Bilgewater champion left, and they already introduced Jack as an exclusive champion for the region. So if Bilgewater is getting a new champion in 2024, it will likely be him. Perhaps he could be released alongside the Twisted Fate 2.0. Targon, however, has no champions left, so we'll either see a champion that isn't tied to the region like Malphite being placed there, a new exclusive champion, or a champion 2.0. And if we are getting a new mono Bandle City champion, then Corki is the only Yordle left. However, I wouldn't be surprised to see a dual region Bandle City champion instead. Now let me quickly mention voiceovers. It's common for voice actors to work on the voice of a champion for multiple games around the same time. We saw it this year with Samira and Seth in all 3 games, and Nidalee and Varus in League and LOR. However, the last Ultimate/Legendary skins or voice updates in League and Wild Rift were all for champions already in LOR. The last ones were Akali in both games, and Raka and Zaya in Wild Rift in 2022. Twitch, Singed, Kaisante and Yone's voice actors also reprised their roles for promotions, and Camille shares the same voice actress as Samira. So any of these may show up in LOR next year. Urgot's voice actor also confirmed that he started doing voice work for Legends of Runeterra. Urgot was also released this year in Wild Rift, so maybe he might join LOR very soon. And finally, the videos promoting the new season have some graphics really similar to the ones from Kindred's teaser from 2015. I have no idea why, but they are coming to Wild Rift, so maybe they'll show up somewhere else, like the season cinematic. I know this was a long video, so here's a small recap. Here's what I mentioned about the new season cinematic, as well as Riot Forge and Arcane. Here are the champions releasing or getting an update in League. Here are the champions that could show up in LOR and in Wild Rift. I'm sure I missed some champions, so let me know down below your theories and ideas for next year, and I'll see you guys in the next video.